Welcome to the first episode of Kevo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look at Donald Vaccarino's popular deck builder card game, Dominion. It's published by Rio Grande Games and supports 2 to 4 players. Thematically, the game is set in a fairly cut-and-dry, pragmatic world. This game is actually the first deck builder I played, and it's pretty well done. The overall concept of a deck builder works like this. Each player starts off with their own personal deck of cards, from which they will draw their hands through the course of the game. Everybody starts with the same cards in their deck, and as they progress through the game, they buy more cards to build their deck. So your deck always gets progressively stronger and more versatile, unless you're terrible at the game, and your deck somehow gets weaker than when you started, which I suppose is theoretically possible. Like many other Euro games, the objective is to score the most victory points, which are represented by the victory cards. See, they say that at the bottom. There's some player interaction, but from my experiences, it's fairly limited. The cards that a player acquires can be used in a combo fashion, and their otherwise simple mechanics can evolve into some complex turns. Dominion was popular back in 2008-2009 and won multiple awards, including the Spiel des Jahres? The box advertises a 30-minute game time, but I've never finished a game that fast. I think most players that aren't super familiar with the rules will take roughly 60 minutes to finish a game. Setting up the game is fairly straightforward and takes about 5 minutes. Each player is dealt an identical deck of 10 cards, 7 copper money, and 3 victory estates. Note that the victory cards in this game can effectively be considered dead cards, as in, when you draw them into your hand, they don't serve any purpose other than to take up space. They are strictly only used at the conclusion of the game to determine who is the winner. The players or dealer or whoever decide which 10 kingdom cards to use for the main supply area, and the rest of the cards in the box are pretty much ignored. I usually just pick one of the configurations listed at the back of the rulebook. Each turn consists of the same 3 phases, appropriately named Action, Buy, Cleanup. The action phase allows you to play one of the action cards in your hand, which can develop into simple or complex combos. Action cards often instruct you or your opponents to draw more cards, or play more action cards, or modify your buying power. Some of the cards get a little more complicated and involve carefully reading the rules. In the subsequent buy phase, you are allowed to buy one or more of the cards from the supply using the money you have. Money is represented by copper, silver, and gold. Treasure cards. For the last phase, the cleanup phase, you discard all the cards you played during your turn and all of the remaining cards in your hand. Then you deal yourself a new hand of 5 cards. The cycle repeats in a clockwise fashion until the players have bought all of the highest valued victory cards, the province. So here's what I think about the game. It requires a bit more time investment to learn each game configuration than I'd like. The base game features 24 different kingdom cards, and each time I play, I feel like I have to relearn the abilities of the 10 cards we chose for that game, and think about the kinds of strategies that relate to the card synergies. For a typical game, I'll spend 5 minutes setting up, and then we all spend 5 minutes reading the cards and learning their bonuses and playstyles. Speaking of which, when you start a new game, the players all start with the same cards and aren't really provided any direction by the game. Enthusiasts might see that as a positive, but I sort of like it when a game nudges you in a certain direction or hints at a set of strategies your particular unique hand would be ideal for. All of the players have the same cards to freely choose from, and that frequently results in games where everyone is following nearly identical strategies. Personally, I think this game would benefit from a card drafting mechanic, similar to the one used in Seven Wonders. If you haven't heard of that one, check it out. It's a very cool 7-player card game. There can be a lot to keep track of during complex combos. I've experienced turns where a player keeps drawing cards and discarding cards and playing actions and playing more actions and increasing their buying power to the point where players are losing track of what's going on or step away from the table due to diminishing interest. Since its release in 2008, there have been several expansions to the base game, including Intrigue, Seaside, Prosperity, Dark Ages, and Alchemy, to name a few. Most of the expansions add some cool new mechanic to the game to encourage different strategies and player interaction. Overall, the base Dominion game is decent. I wish the game involved more strategic interactions, in addition to what's already included, like the curse cards that subtract victory points, and the reaction cards that trigger when an opponent does something specific. Some of the game configurations feel like everyone is playing an action-packed game of solitaire. The combination plays and diverse strategies are the highlights of this game, and I'd give it a 7.0 out of 10. That's it for this episode, and I hope you'll return to the game table for next week's episode, where I'll be racing to cure worldwide outbreaks in the cooperative strategy game Pandemic.